Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Evolution from Mushrooms. Chapter 91. Chenmo has already been able to perceive people injected with Ancestor Cell X very well. Even their thoughts can be perceived to some extent. After all, they are connected to their nervous system. Not to mention Lu Ru. She is the first person controlled by Chenmo in the human world, and the only one who can be easily manipulated without even needing ancestor cells. He is too familiar with Lu Ru, both body and mind. Of course, on the other hand, Lu Ru is too used to being dominated by him. She has completely integrated into her life, and she didn't notice this slow change at all. It can't be said that I didn't notice it. Now she always feels that her changes are due to the will of the world. Divine will. Can you hear me? World, may I call you that? Can you hear my call? Or, am I just a very ordinary member of all things? Lu Ru lay on the bed, talking to herself, thinking that among human beings, she has made extraordinary achievements and is admired by countless people, but in the eyes of the world, she may be just a very ordinary creature, and she can't help feeling a little depressed. Ordinary and insignificant human beings. Lu Ru sighed. However, I may become stronger in the future and be able to influence the world more. Thinking of the news she got during the day, she couldn't help being a little excited again. The River Crab Country has put forward a preliminary ruling plan to establish a coalition government for Terra. And she will be the chief scientist. Become the most authoritative scientist on the entire planet. This time, Lu Ru was not humble. She needs this position to show herself better, and more importantly, the entire position will allow her to have more resources to upgrade her own strength and study the ancestor cells in her body. There is a lot to think about in my mind, but Lu Ru is a self-disciplined person. When the alarm clock rang, she closed her eyes, and it was time for a good night's sleep. But it didn't take long before she got up again. While admiring the beauty, Chenmo controlled his body and walked towards the computer. It's such an amazing feeling. Unlike previous hypnosis methods, this time, he directly connected to Lu Ru's nervous system. And very thorough. At this moment, Lu Ru's heartbeat, breathing, body temperature, the fragrance after bathing, opening the window, the cold wind blowing slightly on the skin, and even the soft warmth of the hand brushing the skin, all of these, he can feel. Moreover, due to the elevated nerve gene, this perception is more acute. Tisk tisk. I'm not that different from Duosh, right? It's not right to seize the house, it means that the other party's consciousness has been destroyed, and it may be more appropriate for me to call it Advent. Chenmo never imagined that one day he would be able to achieve this level in a parasitic way. Connecting each other's nerves through the ancestor cells is equivalent to connecting a branch circuit, or secretly surfing the internet. And the nerve area where Lu Ru awakened her consciousness was blocked by Chenmo. If he wants, he can pretend to be Lu Ru and act among humans. Finding the feeling of being a human being again. Well, it feels good. Chenmo is quite nostalgic, but there is no excitement as imagined. On the contrary, it feels a little narrow and cramped. This is very natural. His sensory organs are so rich that they are connected to all things. With a single thought, he can reach thousands of miles away in an instant. But at this moment, it is equivalent to returning to a mortal. But food is definitely not the domain of human expertise. Chenmo was just naked, and turned on the computer while eating snacks. He is here to browse the recent research results of human beings, and by the way, analyze where there are noteworthy mutant creatures in the recent period. After all, he still hasn't reached some areas, and he won't pay attention to these things all the time. Lu Ru has a summary of information here, and he can check it easily. Chenmo calculated that the research progress of teaching clues and enhancing adaptability can be officially completed tomorrow. After a glance, after the unremitting efforts of human soldiers, his research progress has reached 95%. I will be working for half a day tomorrow, definitely more than 100%. At that time, he will be able to enter the frigid zone, and the land of the entire planet will soon be occupied by him. There are many springs in the polar regions, and these are all reserved by Chenmo for himself. Let's look at the research on psionic energy first. Chenmo thought so, and said it. Hearing Lu Ru's gentle female voice, Chenmo was taken aback for a moment, and then laughed. That's a little too weird, isn't it? But this is also a rare experience, and only he can experience it in the whole world. Psychic research. Human beings are still working very hard, mainly in the field of stimulating psionic energy. Hundreds of thousands of top scientists around the world are doing research around this every day. And it has achieved certain results. These results are somewhat inspiring to Chen Mo. After all, fast computing power does not mean high intelligence, and Chen Mo is actually not much higher than human intelligence. Information. You have carefully reviewed the research materials of human beings, and gained a lot of spiritual energy knowledge that you have not noticed. It is a meaningful thing to think about spiritual energy from another perspective. Your understanding of spiritual energy added, energy knowledge +5. This harvest is quite impressive. The wisdom emanating from hundreds of thousands of scientists really shouldn't be underestimated. After reading all kinds of psionic research reports, Chen Mo continued to read the research on mutant creatures. What kind of mutated creature is this? The whole sea has turned white like a mirror, and caused the temperature to drop sharply. This is a report from Bear Country. Of course, the main purpose is to request the support of the Global Special Operations Team. Lu Ru did not reject the application, and specifically noted that this needs to be confirmed immediately, an urgent task. But no matter how urgent it was, she was prepared to wait another day. She plans to use satellites and staff sampling methods to conduct further in-depth investigations to confirm the real danger. It has to be said that Lu Ru is still very cautious in handling affairs. She actually suspected that it was the Bear Kingdom's use of power for personal gain, because this mutated creature showed no sign of expansion, and was only concentrated within the Arctic Circle. The harm is obvious. It will significantly reduce the surrounding temperature, and the reflectivity to sunlight is abnormally high, which will further lead to a drop in temperature, but whether it should be defined as a cancer species needs to be carefully studied. Perhaps this mutant shrimp, suspected as harmful to especially sensitive to ultraviolet rays or seawater components. This is Lu Ru's reply. Chen Mo became interested in this species instantly. This is clearly a thriving mutant biome. And a certain climate has been formed, which can reflect sunlight in a large area and create a low temperature area. Not only that, but their own abilities are also reducing the surrounding temperature. That's nothing inside the Arctic Circle. But if it continues to expand, the consequences will be unimaginable. There is such a strange creature. It is not very harmful, but it changes the environment so drastically. This is similar to his creep. It does not do much damage. It is mainly through changing the environment and creating suitable creatures. Its own environment, multiply in large numbers, and depend on that environment to the exclusion of the rest. If this kind of creature is left alone, it may directly set off a glacier world and cause the global temperature to plummet. This is also the reason why Lu Ru marked her in a hurry. Early tomorrow morning, a powerful expedition team will go to the North Pole for investigation. Chen Mo thought for a while, and added an extra small task to the exploration team. Early the next morning, just after dawn, there was a roar over the North Pole. Be careful, you can't go any further. The temperature of the air in front has dropped to -100 degrees. A soldier with red eyes said in horror. He activated infrared vision and ultra-distance vision, and after a period of training, he was able to accurately judge the temperature in the distance. It couldn't be more appropriate to send him to carry out this task. Chen Mo couldn't help admiring this scene. Man soon found various ways to exert the abilities of his progenitor cells to the limit. Of course, this also means that the integration is more in-depth. Progenitor cells have deeply penetrated into every aspect of life. No one can reject such cells. The cold wind with extremely low temperature is blowing over. Hurry up, land immediately. Hearing the roar of his teammates, the helicopter pilot immediately lowered the altitude without hesitation. Then landed on a glacier. It's useless to fill up with antifreeze fuel. Grass. There are still 20 kilometers to the target. Come on, you fools, don't be content. If it weren't for Lu Xin, we would have frozen into a big iron lump in the air and then fell to pieces. The captain laughed and cursed, telling everyone to pack up their equipment quickly. Then you have to go on foot. A huge metal box was pulled out and dragged forward by 2 soldiers. God, this alloy box is really heavy. Does the Academy of Sciences have to collect so many samples? A soldier couldn't help being a little speechless. It is quite dangerous to drag such a heavy thing on the polar ice cap. Because of the snow and ice, the cracks and valleys on the ground are all invisible. In some places, there are cracks as deep as hundreds of meters. If you step into them, you will fall directly into the sea. At -70 or 80 degrees, you can die in an instant. Even if they are psychers, half of their lives may be lost in an instant. Lu Xun leads the way. The captain said lightly. Don't worry, we have humanoid super detectors this time. The soldier named Lu Xun also patted his chest, promising. Don't worry, we will never lead you into a ditch. At this time, the infrasound wave organ was activated on his feet, and he could easily sense the surrounding underground situation every time he took a step. So his leading speed is extremely fast. It's like trotting on flat ground. Everyone was immediately envious. Tisk tisk, is this the power of the latest batch of progenitor cells? Brother, how did you get it? The first batch of experimenters were lucky draws. Lu Xun smiled complacently. Don't worry, you are about to have it. A large-scale ancestor cell culture factory has been selected. When the production line comes together, there will be an endless stream of ancestor cell enhancement. Agent, a national transformation plan, passed so quickly. The captain frowned slightly. In the tone, there is some worry. He just saw it on the news yesterday, and this matter is still being discussed. Unexpectedly, after a day, it has already passed. It's literally the speed of light, and the factory is ready to be built. Wouldn't it be a little too soon? He thinks it is normal for this kind of thing to drag on for several years. After all, it involves the human body and genes. You can't be too cautious. Human beings are like babies in this respect, still in the groping stage. Professor Lu Ru personally reviewed and approved it, and she is also in charge of the entire project. When Lu Xun mentioned Professor Lu Ru, a different light suddenly burst into his eyes. The eyes of the rest of the soldiers also lit up. Professor Lu Ru, then there is no problem. The captain immediately felt relieved. After all, this is so wise and powerful, she is simply a goddess who meets once in 10,000 years. Yes, cause many people no longer regarded Lu Ru as an ordinary human being. The number of her fanatical fans is huge. Whether it is official or private, the prestige is extremely terrifying. Lu Ru's various legendary stories are talked about by everyone. I heard that Professor Lu Ru is the first X-type mutant of the ancestor cell. Tisk tisk, I really admire her for daring to test it directly on herself. So she is a goddess, and we can only be the main soldiers running errands. For this gossip, many soldiers enjoyed it. Seeing this situation, the captain couldn't help but smile, and said triumphantly. Seeing that you are so interested, let me tell you a little secret. This task was specially assigned by Professor Lu. Suddenly, the whole team was excited. Some soldiers danced directly. It turned out to be an assigned task from Professor Lu. Isn't that the box? God, this task must be completed perfectly. If this job is done well, I can play for the rest of my life. I don't think there would be any problem with 10 times the size of the box. Makes sense. The attitude of the soldiers suddenly changed completely. It turned out that although it was serious, it was just a task. At this moment, it is completely different. You know, this is the character of a goddess. That woman is really standing on top of the world. Ugly Country praised her highly. She is the closest woman to God. After all, body modification, genetics, superpowers, none of these seem to be the fields that human beings can go so deeply. In the river crab country, everyone is called a god. An extremely beautiful, extremely intelligent woman like a fairy. Chen Mo felt carefully at the side. The nervous systems of these soldiers were all excited, especially that Lu Xun. With the emotional excitement, the ancestor cells were extremely active. These soldiers, just talking about Lu Ru, is the tide in their heads. Hee. It seems that Lu Ru's status can go a step further. Chen Mo looked at the reactions of many soldiers and couldn't help but sigh. This woman who has mastered by herself grows up very fast, with the right time, place and people. Unknowingly, she has already stood out and reached this position among human beings. If it was in ancient times, it would definitely be possible to ascend the throne and be called the queen with a loud shout. But now that set is outdated, but it is still possible to become an important person who influences the entire human society. A top elite totem in human society, a goddess loved by countless people, her body, face, and wisdom are all top-notch. Hee. Lu Ru is a goddess, I have cultivated it, right? Chen Mo also feels a sense of accomplishment when he thinks that it was cultivated by himself. Of course, the first step of training human beings has just been taken. Not only human beings, but also potential species on this planet, Chen Mo will slowly incorporate into his own system. Integrate into their cells and enjoy the fruits of their evolutionary development. Be careful, there is only 1 kilometer ahead. The soldiers walking in the front suddenly stopped. Everyone wear a mask. Heitzi, go up and check the air. By Wang Liu, the battle formation is advancing. The captain issued orders one after another. Chen Mo turned his gaze, and through the perspective of the front soldier, he had already seen the appearance of the mutated creature. It's a mutant shrimp, it looks like. Should be krill. Chen Mo made a judgment county. However, this group has clearly been severely mutated. Krills are highly adaptable and can live wherever there is seawater. They can be found in most sea areas, and their reproduction speed is very scary. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a creature that drinks water and grows flesh. Now after the mutation, the reproduction speed is even more terrifying. More importantly, they possessed a more abnormal ability to adapt to the cold, and even began to create colder regions themselves. The whole body has a mirror-like luster and can reflect sunlight, which allows most of the sunlight to be reflected out of the atmosphere. Most of the planet's temperature comes from the sun. When they act like this, it is simply frenzied. If they are allowed to occupy all the sea areas, the entire planet will fall into a freezing ice age. The spiritual energy around here has been consumed a lot, and the mutated krill used them to create a cold area. Chen Mo secretly controls the progenitor cells in the soldier's body, and activates the extra psychic detection function, but this function is not connected to the soldier's nervous system, only he can use it. This way of life floating on the sea is very strong. If I can expand to the sea. Wait. The psionic energy consumption around here is too high. This is not normal. The only explanation is that the mutated scale underground has some ability to actively absorb spirits. This is an awesome ability. Apart from himself, Chen Mo is the first to discover that there are other creatures that can do this. Of course, this kind of absorption by krill is very inefficient. But they can't stand the huge number of them. It's so hard. The soldier picked up the butt of his gun and slammed it down. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound on the surface of the sea. These krills are bred so thickly, about 10 centimeters thick, that the whole surface of the sea is filled with them. It's okay, at least it's not a group of mutant rats. The captain is more optimistic. Hurry up and pack the samples, Heitzi, you are responsible for recording all kinds of data. The soldiers were not idle, and the physique of the psychers allowed them to move around in such a harsh environment. Hiss. The temperature here is frighteningly low, we need to hurry up. Suddenly, Lu Xin had a bad feeling. A sense of crisis welled up in my heart. In an instant, the progenitor cells in the body began to stimulate the nerves, and a large amount of adrenaline began to be secreted. Without the slightest hesitation, he pulled the soldiers who were taking samples and ran back. Run, at the same time shouted in the mouth. Everyone is a psychic, and the reaction is extremely fast, immediately ran wildly. I saw a burst of cold air released from the krill's body, and soon, the surrounding area was all frozen, and everything was frozen. Good guy, collectively create chills. Everyone's heart felt cold when they saw it, and they almost fell asleep just now. Can still sample. The soldiers immediately looked at each other. Not sure if I should take the risk. Otherwise, it will be frozen into an ice lump in an instant, which is life-threatening. The cold can reach minus 150 degrees in an instant, and our protective clothing can't handle it. Lu Xin looked at it, his face was very serious. But immediately, a wonderful thought suddenly appeared in his mind, just like the thought of being alert to danger just now, it appeared suddenly. He didn't think much about it, and said it directly. But don't worry, everyone. This mutated krill has no intelligence. The little thing just reacted instinctively when it was stimulated by the huge vibration. When the captain heard it, he immediately chose to believe it, and encouraged his morale. Understood, it's like when a bird is frightened and takes off, it always likes to shit. The last stinky metaphor made everyone amused. The atmosphere suddenly relaxed. Think about Professor Lu Ru, everyone. The captain said again. If you don't do it, I will go by myself. I will definitely do this job. As the temperature rose a bit, everyone quickly continued to work. Chen Mo, on the other hand, carefully observed the mutant krill. This thing is indeed a bit powerful. If he hadn't noticed the change in the concentration of psionic energy just now, he almost fell into the cave of these mentally handicapped creatures. This place is deep in the polar region, and it is freezing cold. Ordinary aircraft cannot fly here, and the oil in the air will freeze. It's not easy to organize people to come here. All equipment is purpose-built. If this group of people were all frozen to death here, then Chen Mo would have to wait at least 2 extra days before he could get the required samples. Under the suggestion of Chen Mo, the soldiers were cautious and did not speak, trying not to cause a big shock. Sampling is a small spoonful of Japanese stones. For fear of alarming these little guys who are only as big as thumbs. I can't believe it, it's such a little guy, breathing like a floating glacier. Yeah, but fortunately, they don't have intelligence. I can't imagine what it would be like if such creatures all over the world became intelligent in an instant. Some soldiers were very emotional. Even if you have wisdom, you won't be our opponent. There are many mutant creatures who died in my hands. To be honest, just by looking at the eyes, you really can't do it. It's exactly the same as a human. The captain is a veteran, so he couldn't help but think of his own experience. In case they have a king in an instant, just like the Mouse King, they can rule the entire group in an instant. Some soldiers had a big brain hole, and the story of the Mouse King was widely circulated. Have you played too much Interstellar? I'm still the Zerg Queen. There is no way there is such a creature. Even if there is, it will not be here. Terra belongs to us humans. ... What many soldiers don't know is that the creature they talked about really exists, and it is even more powerful. Ostensibly Terra belongs to humans, but actually belongs to Chen Mo. He's one of those creatures that, one consciousness, spreads out in groups and with the whole world. Chen Mo spreads to various environments, tropical, temperate, frigid, and then into organisms, and finally goes deep into genes. What about in the future? Where else will I exist? Chen Mo couldn't help but smiled expectantly. His form of existence is gradually moving towards the unknown, the direction that ordinary creatures cannot understand. As the evolution becomes stronger and stronger, I will become more and more weird and unpredictable. Ordinary civilizations will not be able to detect my existence, nor will they be able to understand my existence. I live in the same world as them, but the level of existence is completely different. Quote. After half a day, a black thermostatic alloy box was transported to the territory of the river crab country at the fastest speed. Now, the power of the river crab country has been unimpeded in all countries, and the joint plan has been put on the agenda. Everyone knows that the Academy of Sciences will be the Academy of Sciences of all countries in the future. Among them, the samples needed by the big shots are naturally delivered at the fastest speed all the way. Thus, Chen Mo received his own sample half a day later. Event: you absorbed the flesh and blood of the mutated krill, obtained 100% of the krill gene, you extracted the usable gene from it, your gene structure was optimized, the composition of the cell fluid was adjusted, your low temperature resistance, acid and alkali resistance, the ability has been enhanced, your ability to absorb psionic energy has been partially enhanced, and your adaptability +1. Information: you have obtained a 100% map of the krill's gene, and you have analyzed a possible behavior pattern from it, which will help you transform the creep, and you have also obtained part of the species that survived in high saline alkaline liquids technology. You have conducted in-depth research on mutated krills, mutated ants, mutated rats, etc., group mutant species, and you have a deeper understanding of group psychic powers and the interaction between individuals and collectives in groups, +1 to your psionic knowledge, +1 to Gestalt thinking. Evolution clues: enhanced adaptability. Based on the existing genetic data, you have developed a set of plans to improve cell structure. This series of improvements can greatly increase your expansion speed and ability to endure extreme environments. Your adaptability +5, danger level +3. Good guy, here comes a full evaluation. Research at its best. Chen Mo whistled excitedly. This kind of evolution is the real thing. Instantly increase 6 points of adaptability. Not only that, but his ability to absorb spiritual energy has also been improved by a small amount. A little bit of improvement is of great significance to Chen Mo. Because the number of mushrooms is too large, even if it increases by 1%, the whole world adds up, and the evolution points he absorbs will have to be much more. Quantitative change leads to qualitative change. Moreover, this ability can also be integrated into the ancestor cells. Human beings will have a small part of the ability to absorb spiritual energy by relying on it. Although this ability is extremely weak, this is a good start. Moreover, there is never a shortage of geniuses among human beings, and the base is huge. Even this little opportunity will create many psychic powerhouses. In addition to the above visible gains, several evolutionary clues of Chen Mo have made progress. Evolution clues. Your gene pool data has been updated. The research progress of evolution clues, Heart of the Swarm, has reached 30%. The research progress of evolution clues, Spiritualism, has reached 5%, and the research progress of evolution clues, Super Absorption, has reached 20%. Next, I can enter the frigid zone. Chen Mo is full of confidence, and his adaptability has reached 26.5 at this time. There are many spiritual springs in the north and south levels. There is no human interference here, and it is difficult for them to move around in this area. Therefore, Chen Mo has more than 70% of the spiritual energy springs here, all allocated to himself. Adding up the two levels, the number is close to 100. More than 100 evolution points can be generated every day. After occupying the cold zone, I will completely cover the entire continent of the planet. Chen Mo looked forward to it. And the number of his mushrooms will hit a new high. Much higher than it is now, the kind that is several exponential levels higher. After all, there are countless corpses in the permafrost beneath the North Pole. For hundreds of millions of years, no one has exploited it, and the nutrients inside have been frozen, and he will completely occupy there. Arctic Africa was originally located near the equator, with numerous vegetation and animals. Later, the plate movement floated to the North Pole and was frozen. Not only safe, but also truly unscrupulous expansion. The entire creep, covering the entire Arctic continents underground. Instead of a small area to the east and a small area to the west as it is now. That is a continent as large as Kangaroo Island. This kind of expansion covering the entire continent, Chen Mo's distributed neural network, will increase by more than 100 times compared to the current number. Just do it. Keep on evolving. A three-dimensional map of the planet emerged in Chen Mo's mind, starting from the nearest Shangguo area and spreading to the North Pole. Go forward along the permafrost. The current speed is 1.2 meters per minute. Not only that, but Chen Mo also controlled the birds to bloom more, and headed towards the frozen continent from all directions. It's a pity that the entire continent is frozen, otherwise it could be like the Kangaroo continent, blooming on all sides. Chen Mo looked at the spreading creep, and said with some regret. This hindered his advancing speed. According to this, it is estimated that it will take 1 or 2 months to completely occupy the entire Arctic continent. But he has plenty of time. For the time being, you can ignore the affairs in the polar region, just wait for the bacteria to automatically extend. Every time it spreads to a spring, Chen Mo will come over. Carefully build an underground mushroom forest. You can study how to train Miss Black Silk and the Queen. Chen Mo has had enough experience in human beings, and has a deeper understanding of Gestalt thinking and genetic modification. You can try it, and inject the progenitor cells into its biocidal body. This may allow these little guys to unleash unprecedented potential, speed up their evolution, and make them incredibly powerful. Fox Demon, Zerg Queen. Under his evolutionary blessing, it is not impossible. And the most wonderful thing is that these abilities come from his ancestor cells. It can be said that he will become the foundation and source of power for these species. As such an important existence, his benefits will not be less. Chen Mo thought about it excitedly, and just as he was about to leave, he heard the roar of the sky. What? It's the human army coming. The speed is so fast. This time it was the bomber fleet that was dispatched, and the roar pierced the sky. Looking up, there was a large black area. The discovery here made Lu Ru very disturbed, so she directly decided to carry out the destruction task, and it was the most powerful destruction. Hundreds of bomber fleets are carrying heavy incendiary bombs capable of destroying a city. Not only that, but also highly toxic bombs such as white phosphorus bombs. The purpose is to completely eliminate the mutated krill in this area. Chen Mo looked at the sea of flames in front of him and the large area of continuously melting glaciers. His eyes suddenly moved, and among the bomber fleet, a pilot's small hands immediately trembled. Hand, are you crazy, throwing white phosphorus bombs randomly? Aren't you mistaken? You also empty the ground-penetrating bomb. Wait for criticism when you go back next time. Hand was stunned for a moment, looking at the co-pilot's brother. He was about to cry. Brother, trust me once. I really didn't do it on purpose. Just now the radar showed that we had reached the bombing area. Didn't you see it? There's a sea of flames below. You're blind. The co-pilot immediately picked up the communicator. Call the command center. Call the command center. This is bomber unit number 6. The pilot is suspected to be hallucinating. Please return early. Hearing this, Hand opened his mouth, but was unable to refute. Speechless, such an easy task has been messed up. When he returned, he looked down, and sure enough, he was blind, and the bomb he dropped was 108,000 miles away from the target, but he didn't know how he did it. It must be because I didn't sleep well last night. If I play with my phone all night again, I'm not human. Hand gritted his teeth. However, what Hand didn't know was that after he left early, white phosphorus bombs fell one after another in the bomber formation returning. However, the pilot on the bomber had a calm face, not knowing what he was doing. The reason is simple. What they injected was the more advanced progenitor cell X, and Chen Mo controlled them more perfectly, without hints, directly connected to the nervous system, and created illusions. Hehe, it's a good thing that the pilots are all elites, and basically all of them were injected with the X model. Otherwise, hallucinations will appear in a large area, and the reliability of the ancestor cells will be questioned. In this way, the bomber formation was sailing quietly, and for no apparent reason, some white phosphorus bombs that had not been dropped would fall from the sky. Along the snow-covered glaciers, huge pits are left. It's not over yet. At the bottom of the huge pit is burning white phosphorus. White phosphorus is different from other types of combustibles. Their ignition point is terribly low, and they can spontaneously ignite at room temperature. Most of the will-o'-the-wisps in the cemetery are formed by the spontaneous combustion of white phosphorus. As long as there is air, it is almost impossible to extinguish the burning white phosphorus. Whatever is contaminated, it will be burned until it is completely consumed. On ice, in water, they can burn equally. As a result, big holes creaked on top of each other. The areas Chen Mo chose to drop the white phosphorus bombs are all areas with very weak glaciers. In some places, the permafrost layer can be vaguely seen with the naked eye, or in places with deep trenches, the permafrost layer can be approached soon. The white phosphorus bomb burned terribly, fell rapidly, and soon burned through the ice layer, and slightly heated the ground. Boom! Soon, mutated Arctic seagulls flew over, dropping mushrooms into the big holes one by one. But as soon as it was put in, the mushrooms were finished. Not because of the horrible high temperature, the temperature dropped very quickly. But white phosphorus itself is highly toxic to living things. And white phosphorus is very soluble in water, fat, protein and so on. It just so happens that cells cannot lack these two substances. 0. In other words, this poison cannot be cleaned up. If you suck it in, your wisdom will accumulate more and more, and you will die directly in the end. But Chen Mo also has a solution. His heart skipped a beat, and the first mushroom he threw went random. With an instant bang, the entire bottom of the pit was filled with wriggling cells. These terrifying cells multiplied extremely fast, absorbing all the surrounding white phosphorus in an instant, and only part of the cells themselves died. The speed at which they were poisoned to death couldn't catch up with the speed of reproduction. Their adaptability is 10 times that of Chen Mo. That is more than 200 adaptability, which is already the standard for space creatures. Very scary. This is very useful for being a scavenger. With a thought, the genes in the rampage cells were broken one after another, and all the cells were hydrolyzed. At this time, white phosphorus has been absorbed and fixed in these substances, and some of them have been transformed into non-toxic substances. The following mushrooms can easily expand. There are many such huge potholes, which traverse a small half of Arctic continent. Not enough though. With Chen Mo's thought, Lu Ru, who was in charge of reviewing the action, felt that it was not safe enough when he saw the action report. Fry it a few more times, load it with white phosphorus bombs, land in Shonguo, fill up the fuel, and fry carefully. Let the temperature in that area rise to 20 degrees. She ordered. This will ensure that the mutant krill in that area is extinct. But even so, she will send someone to keep an eye on that area to prevent this little creature from resurging. The bombing continued. Every time Chen Mo would secretly intercept a part of the white phosphorus bomb. In this way, holes were forcibly opened on the huge glacier. Each one is an excellent diffusion point. Spreading from 1 point and spreading from 100 points have completely different meanings. The speed difference is far more than 100 times. In just half a day, I have occupied more than 10 springs. Under the cold Arctic glaciers, in the permafrost layer, creeps are spreading in all directions relying on every bombing point. Chen Mo's consciousness moved, and large pieces of mushrooms began to grow. They grew directly on the creep, allowing them to obtain a lot of nutrients. These mushrooms surrounded the spring and would try to absorb the diffused spiritual energy. Another spring in hand. Chen Mo is very excited. Here, it is simply his expanded music king. There are no humans, the huge glaciers, and the ultra-low temperature also cut off prying eyes. And below this, there is also a very rich organic matter. Yes, when this continent was at its most prosperous, it was gradually icy cold, leaving a large number of dead species in the May 10th. Some are even lifelike. It's like being alive. There are even corpses of ancient apes. The creep spread over the corpse, and the growth rate suddenly accelerated a little, because it absorbed a large amount of nutrients instantly. Hee, these corpses are surprisingly fresh. This Arctic continent is like a huge refrigerator. Event: you absorbed the flesh and blood of the ancient ape, obtained 5% of the ancient ape gene, you extracted the usable gene from it, your genetic structure has been optimized, your nutrient absorption ability has been enhanced, mycelium nutrient absorption speed plus 0.1. Information: your gene bank data has been updated, and you have obtained 5% of the gene integrity of the common ancient ape. By analyzing the genes, your understanding of the ancient ape has deepened, and the efficiency of various actions of the ancient ape has increased by 5%. How is this going? Chen Mo was stunned. Among the dead bodies that have been dead for at least hundreds of thousands of years, he has actually obtained genes. But after Chen Mo thought about it for a while, he understood the speed. This is the result of freezing. The environment under the glacier has not changed for countless years. It is very stable and absolutely frozen. Even the cells are still intact. Humans can extract some living ancient bacteria from it, not to mention extracting genes, which is Chen Mo's old profession. That is to say, in an instant, Chen Mo's heart skipped a beat. He saw the gene pool of an entire continent beckoning to him. Although the genes are still somewhat damaged due to the long years, I cannot extract many genes each time, but it is not difficult to gather the genetic map of a whole continent. And with the acquisition of genes, Chen Mo will have a bonus for this species: the further you go, the more genes you absorb. Sure enough, the second time, Chen Mo obtained 7% of Ji Yuan's genes. There seems to be a group of ancient apes nearby, and they were all frozen to death inside a cave. This happens to be cheaper than Chen Mo. Open black lens bracket information, close black lens bracket. You have obtained 100% genetic map of ancient apes. By analyzing the genes, your understanding of ancient apes has been deepened. Based on this research, your understanding of organic species branches and carbon-based organisms has also been deepened. Carbon-based organisms knowledge +1, the efficiency of its various actions increases by 1%. Information: through the comparison between ordinary humans, mutant apes and ancient apes, your understanding of mutant creatures has deepened, and you have a deeper understanding of the process of evolution. Your understanding of psionic effects and organic species increased knowledge of psionics +1 for carbon-based creatures. Apart from Australopithecus, Chen Mo continued to gain other achievements. Ancient giant crocodiles, strange piranhas that have never been seen, and even huge dinosaurs. These species are all frozen on this continent. Of course, this is not the most miraculous thing. What is even more miraculous is that in a spring, Chen Mo found a giant worm, and it came back to life. Yes, alive. Looking carefully at the surrounding environment, Chen Mo immediately understood. This giant worm covered with bone spurs was instantly frozen by the icy sea water. This should have been an accident. But the accident put it into hibernation. Of course, this state cannot be maintained until now, but the emergence of spiritual energy has changed everything. Coincidentally, this spring hole happened to appear on the corpse of this giant worm. Some of the giant worm's cells are still alive, and it is better preserved than other creatures. Thus, a miracle happened. With the help of this part of the cells, it begins to recover gradually. Remove the shell, turned into a smaller bug. Alive. At this moment, it is devouring its original body hungry. Tisk tisk, a miracle spanning billions of years. Chen Mo couldn't help being surprised and sighing. This is the miracle of life evolution. Although he is the most miraculous among them, other creatures also have their own dazzling splendor. The appearance of psychic energy really changed the planet profoundly and incomparably. Chen Mo realizes that the whole world is still changing drastically, and there are still many miracles that may happen. I will continue to work hard to evolve. To be honest, Chen Mo was also inspired by this bug who was trying to survive. With a thought, the creep spread over, but no deadly poisonous gas or corrosive liquid was released. Instead, part of the high-energy fat was decomposed, and the surrounding temperature began to rise immediately. The worm's mobility increased a lot in an instant. It began to devour flesh and blood in big mouthfuls, and the instant noodles of its body began to harden continuously. Then, keep growing. After changing the shell twice, it grew into a huge bug with a length of 1 meter, 0.0. At this time, the surrounding food has been eaten up. It instinctively moved towards the warm direction of the creeping blanket, and found another huge corpse. This is a dinosaur with hundreds of tons of flesh and blood. Enough for bugs to enjoy. And it's near the spring. The worms devoured the flesh and blood, and continued to mutate. In the end, he grew into a huge insect 10 meters long, with an extremely hard carapace, and huge mouthparts capable of crushing the hardest bones. The permafrost is naturally no problem. Of course, this is not enough. Creep spread and began to climb onto it. The giant worm did not refuse. It had already developed a certain amount of wisdom at this time. At the beginning of the birth of wisdom, it came into contact with the creep, and the sound in it felt extremely kind. This is its reliance and is worthy of trust. Creep is its home. Chen Mo manipulated the creep, carefully shaping the shape on the giant worm. A shape that facilitates digging. Sharp drill bits, sharp edges. Then, activate the heavy metal gene. Among the creeps, metal elements began to be continuously transported up, and then accumulated on the drill bit, metallized from the very top, and the giant worm was also very cooperative. Like a statue. Half a day later, a weird metal giant worm was completed. What is hung on the spur shell is a metal shell with a drill bit in front. Because it is grown and then metallized, the structure is extremely stable. If humans saw it, they would be so frightened that they would faint. This is definitely an alien robot bug. There are too many artificial marks on the metal shell. But the strange thing is that it seems to grow out of the body of a bug. Boom! The giant worm twisted its body excitedly and burrowed forward. Much faster than the previous speed of 3.5. And the area it drilled through is a spacious passage. It's 10 meters wide. Moving straight forward, the giant worm soon reached the next spring. If the creeper spreads here, it will take at least 1 day. Hee, let's call you a tunnel worm. Chen Mo was very satisfied with his masterpiece, so he gave it a name. From the birth of this bug, to the generation of wisdom, and then to its current form, he almost has his participation. He is also a half-creator. It really has the right to give this race a name. Now that the exterior has been remodeled, let's try the interior too. Chen Mo made up his mind to pay attention. More transformations will make the tunnel worm become the overlord of the underground, so that he can quickly occupy the springs in this continent. He originally planned to try it on Miss High Sea, but choosing another day is worse than bumping into the sun. This tunnel worm is also a good experimental target. And if some minor accident happened, he wouldn't be so heartbroken. Hiss. The tunnel worm let out a painful hiss. The injection of the progenitor cells caused a large bag to bulge up on the surface of the tunnel worm, and then exploded. Rejection is quite strong. This is still under the condition that Chen Mo has obtained the genetic map of the giant worm. This immune system is somewhat different from modern organisms. It is simple and rude, but it is effective enough. Chen Mo took his time and made some fine-tuning on the genes to change the structure of the progenitor cells. Disguise it and blend in. As long as the camouflage is good enough, even, it is almost the same as the original cells in the body. In this case, what kind of immune system is useless? At this time, in fact, the ancestor cells can already be regarded as the original cells in the body. This kind of thing often happens in nature, but the time is usually calculated in 10,000 years. Chen Mo is proficient in the way of evolution and can shorten this time to 1 or 2 hours. Soon, the progenitor cells began to spread and spread. Help the tunnel worm build a more powerful neural network system, make it smarter, and be able to accurately understand Chen Mo's instructions. Then support to afford some extra organs. Of course, this can't be that 20 can produce any organ it wants, and it must match the nervous system and energy supply system of the tunnel worm. Otherwise, there will be a villain driving a big car, and it will be over. Nidus worms can quickly become overwhelmed and die of organ failure. This has occasionally happened in large-scale human experiments. Fortunately, Chen Mo is well aware of these unexpected situations, and his transformation experience is already quite rich. What kind of accidents will happen, and which transformations need to be carried out slowly? All of these are well known. More importantly, with the spread of creep in the Arctic, Chen Mo built a huge distributed neural network. His brain became more and more terrifying, and the corresponding calculation power also increased directly. Now the benefits are manifested. For manipulating the tiny progenitor cells in the tunnel worm, he can easily grasp it. This is a technical job, and if you want to manipulate it precisely, and the amount of manipulation is huge, this is not to say that being able to control consciousness can be done with a simple ability. Chen Mo first plans to evolve the tunnel worms with powerful digestive organs that can directly swallow a large amount of food, like creepers, and directly process various organic matter. In this way, the tunnel worm only needs to open its mouth and move forward to eat. Just like the blue whale in the sea, relying on its huge size, it ate it with its mouth closed and its eyes closed. Swimming around, I ate a mouthful of fish. However, Chen Mo hadn't finished evolving this organ yet, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Wait, since it has the same function as creep, why do you need to evolve it? Why waste this crap? Anyway, the tunnel worm also regards this place as its own home. Let it rely on the creep to supplement nutrition, or it will be over. Usually store high energy fat in the body, enough for several days of activities. This will not only reduce the weight of the body several times. The huge digestive organs can all be removed. This kind of plan is a bit like Zerg. It is equivalent to specializing the tunnel worm. Except for hole punching and fighting, all other functions are erased as much as possible. Unnecessary organs are all installed outside the body. Outflow the most space for combat organs, or stuff more defensive bones. Quote, "Hehe, this is definitely an epic-making species." After Chen Mo finished the design, he simulated it in his mind and found it amazing. To know, digestive organs have been a big problem all over the planet right now. It is impossible for this thing to evolve to be strong and reliable. Many animals know this weakness. For example, the wild wolves in the Black Continent have the notoriety of sucking their anus. Many animals also tuck their tails when they are frightened. The purpose is to protect the most vulnerable anus. Why is there such a fragile thing? It's because of the digestive system. Not to mention human beings, the digestive organs are the system that occupies the largest volume in the entire human body and is also the most prone to problems. The rest of the animals are basically the same. All kinds of small and large intestines, a whole lot. Some animals even have 3 stomachs. It can be said that removing the digestive system is equivalent to directly removing a large part of the weakness. In the future, the tunnel worms will directly rely on mycelia to inject nutrients. If you are really hungry, you can spread mycelium and absorb part of the nutrients for emergency. Chen Mo murmured excitedly and began to transform. This is the perfect combination of plants and animals. Bring the ability of symbiosis to the limit. No, it should be stronger, but I haven't found it yet. Chen Mo held back the ecstasy in his heart. He knows that there are people outside of people, and there is a truth beyond the sky. But for now, the tunnel worm is definitely the purest fighting creature on the entire planet. Yes, at first Chen Mo just wanted to create a worm that burrows quickly, as can be seen from the name of the tunnel worm. Unexpectedly, the inspiration came, and I couldn't stop it. Coupled with the huge genetic knowledge and rich experience in transformation, it can be said that everything will come naturally. The tunnel worm's ability to drill into the ground has been further strengthened. Soon, relying on the tunnel worm, Chen Mo can occupy the entire underground of the Arctic ice sheet 050. Cold, permafrost, these harsh environments can't stop Chen Mo. At the same time, the thermal energy, infrasound waves, and vibration sensing organs all over the body can also allow it to see through the dark underground scene at 360 degrees without dead ends. It always finds the most suitable drilling direction. A cavity for storing spores is also installed in the body of the tunnel worm. With the excavation, it does not have to wait for the creeper to catch up, but can spread the spores by itself and reproduce the creeper. When necessary, it can also spit out high-energy fat to accelerate the spread of bacteria. The metal armor on the body surface is no longer a plug-in, but is really combined with flesh and blood, and grows together. To outsiders, this is inconceivable and impossible. How can metal grow together with flesh and blood? But Chen Mo did it by step-by-step metallization. The nidus worm is also endowed with some low-level regeneration genes, which can make its body more flexible and its mobility more durable. Of course, what is indispensable in the end is the ability to absorb psionic energy, which can allow the tunnel worm to evolve freely. Psionic energy will make the nidus worm bigger and more powerful. Chen Mo gave the tunnel worm a strong foundation, and the psionic cells gave the tunnel worm an infinite future. Of course, no matter how it evolves, everything is under Chen Mo's control. Looking at the ferocious behemoth in front of him, Chen Mo was very satisfied. This is his first biological weapon. Although there are still many shortcomings, it is still a masterpiece. The next step is to find a way to embed this growth method in the genes of the tunnel worm. This is equivalent to programming. Chen Mo recorded the transformation process, arranged it in a reasonable sequence, and then let the newly born tunnel worms gradually copy their genes while they were growing, repeating the process. This is like a human fetus, which has a different shape every month, and has gone through the evolution process again during the embryonic period. Chen Mo also wants to edit this man-made evolution process into the gene of the nidus worm. Nidus worms belong to ancient organisms, and both the number and structure of genes are very simple. So it is easy for Chen Mo to carry out this kind of gene embedding work. Humans are different. Genetic modification, especially the modification of chromosomal DNA, affects the whole body. Chen Mo has not yet dared to do it on humans. Therefore, the children born by human beings are not yet able to inherit the ancestor cells. Of course, even if Chen Mo had this ability, he wouldn't take this step so quickly. Otherwise, it would be too shocking, and humans themselves might be terrified. He believes that when the technology of his plan is fully mature, human beings will already be used to progenitor cells. At that time, it will be a matter of course to completely embed human genes. At that time, it will be completely parasitic among human beings. This level of parasitism will be completely impossible to eradicate. Even ordinary advanced civilizations, under the interference of psionic energy, cannot detect the traces of it. Even if you go back to history, the origin and process of the entire ancestor cell are clearly visible and have a context to follow. Everything is just a coincidence. However, it is all in line with science. The evolved tunnel worms have shown amazing power, quickly digging deep underground. The speed is even comparable to running on land. With the efforts of the tunnel worms, the springs were covered by creeps. Huge frozen corpses were drilled by tunnel worms. The scattered spores began to grow, and Chen Mo continuously obtained a large number of genetic maps. Information: you have obtained 100% genetic map of Tyrannosaurus rex. By analyzing the genes, your understanding of Tyrannosaurus rex has deepened. Based on this research, you have further research on the behavior mode of high oxygen environment, and your oxygen utilization efficiency has increased. Yes, carbon-based biological knowledge +1. Evolution clues: your gene pool data has been updated. The research progress of Evolution Clues, Heart of the Swarm, has reached 35%. the research progress of evolution clues, spiritualism, has reached 5%, and the research progress of evolution clues, super absorption, has reached 30%. Hehe, within 3 days, I can occupy the springs in the entire Arctic. Chen Mo made a little calculation, and the evolution points alone could add 100 points in 3 days. It only takes 5 days for the creep to cover the entire Arctic continent. This is not a little bit faster than the 1 or 2 months expected at the beginning. By then, his super distributed neural network will be fully formed. But looking at the system information, at this time, the research progress of evolutionary clues, super absorption, has not increased much. The reason is that the support of carbon-based biological knowledge reserves is almost sufficient, and the support of several genes is poor. Stronger, nerve, metal, toxin, regeneration, gene support. First recombine the evolutionary metal gene, just to strengthen the tunnel. Before Chen Mo finished speaking, he paused. The reason was a loud bang. The sound was so loud that Chen Mo, whose eyes stayed on the tunnel worm, was shocked. The tunnel worm traveling at high speed stopped instantly, and the sound of clicking and clicking kept ringing. Its front drill bit is straight up cracked. Hiss. The tunnel worm has a painful consciousness. Now it has a nervous system and is connected to the tactile organs. Although this perception has been deliberately weakened, it can still feel pain. What the hell, it's so hard. Chen Mo let the tunnel worm clear out a hole. A mirror-like metal wall appeared in front of Chen Mo. Holy shit. Is this an alien thing? Chen Mo was a little confused. He had to think so. Because, in his perception, this metal wall does not exist. Yes, electromagnetic detection, infrasound waves, vibration perception, thermal energy perception, these detections all show that the front is just an ordinary rock. In other words, this metal wall is not an ordinary alloy, but uses some kind of extremely ingenious interference camouflage. This is also the reason why the tunnel worm was unprepared and directly bumped into it. Among its various detection sites, this thing simply does not exist. However, this kind of interference is passive and can be easily cracked. With powerful computing power, Chen Mo bypassed this mechanical interference in a few minutes. Then, under the detection of electromagnetic waves, a strange elliptical metal body with a length of 100 meters and a width of 50 meters appeared in front of Chen Mo. However, the detection is still not able to go deep inside the metal wall. Looks like some kind of weird alien warship. Chen Mo observed the shape carefully, and his eyes froze immediately. No, this ship is absorbing psionic energy. Although very few, but there is no exit. It can be confirmed that there is still some kind of equipment, or life, alive. It is also thanks to the scarcity of psionic energy in the vicinity, this battleship can't absorb much. Chen Mo's consciousness moved, and the tunnel worm spit out a mouthful of high-energy fat mixed with spores. Immediately there was a blanket of creep. Creep quickly spread along the hull of the elliptical metal battleship, until the entire ellipse is wrapped. This was not enough. Chen Mo added dozens of layers of creep to the outside. Each layer of creep can absorb a little spiritual energy. After more than a dozen floors, no spiritual energy can be obtained by the opponent. Looking at the seal he made, Chen Mo heaved a sigh of relief. He uses various methods for this thing: venom, corrosion, drill bits, and powerful electric current. All cannot be opened. Obviously it can't be dealt with now, it can only be closed temporarily. This is obviously a product of a higher civilization. However, this kind of closure is probably just delaying time. Chen Mo is well aware of this. Because, the characteristic of psionic energy is that it appears randomly. They are not like dust, floating in the air, and they will disappear if they are stopped. Their movement is more similar to the projection of high-dimensional objects in this world. Be here for a while, be there for a while. There is no process in between. It's like teleporting. Therefore, even though Chen Mo has blocked all psychic energy from entering on the outer surface, yet, psychic energy cannot help appearing directly inside the spaceship. Quantity this amount will be extremely rare, but the other party will eventually obtain enough energy. Of course, this is only the most pessimistic forecast. There is a high probability that the opponent's consumption cannot cover the expenditure, and this strange metal shell will never be able to activate, or the things inside will die directly. Even if it can wake up, according to the spiritual energy it can absorb, the time span is at least 100 years or more. Chen Mo is considered a semi-expert in psychic energy. He knows that psychic energy contains powerful power, but the conversion ratio between psychic energy and energy is not unlimited. Even if the other party can exert all the power of psionic energy and not waste a single point, but he will only get 1 point of spiritual energy at most every year. Before that, Chen Mo was confident that he could open this metal shell. After dealing with the battleship, Chen Mo returned to the topic again. Reorganize the evolution, complete the evolution clues, and super-absorb this research. Warning: you are trying to use the evolution point to recombine and evolve the metal type 5 feet gene, which may increase the metal content in the cell, increase the strength of the cell wall, and slightly reduce the nutrient absorption capacity. 40% probability. It is worth noting, yes, this operation may lead to unknown consequences. Please choose carefully. Chen Mo did not hesitate to invest 40 evolutionary points for recombination evolution. Just come hard. Consumed more than 400 evolution points. Chen Mo finally got the metal type 8 feet gene. But in the last step, there is too little relevant knowledge, so Chen Mo can only let it go. Continue to evolve the toxin gene. This branch of the toxin evolutionary tree is very thick and can naturally be easily extended. This is also a manifestation of a rich reserve of knowledge. There are too many genes related to toxins in the world, and Chen Mo has been involved in various types. Without much effort, Chen Mo obtained the toxin type 8 gene, followed by nerve and regeneration. These two requirements are not high, just upgrade to 1 level respectively. Even so, Chen Mo's evolution point was also drained, not a single drop left. If it weren't for the temporary harvest of a wave of Qian Li's mutated earthworms, and the springs on the Arctic continent would already have income, Chen Mo might have to wait another day. The evolution points are still not enough, I have to find a way to occupy the ones in the sea. Chen Mo had this idea when he saw the krill last time, and now this idea is getting stronger. After all, the springs in the ocean account for 70%, which is an absolute bulk, and there is no need to distribute it to humans. It's like a big beauty lying there. It's so tempting, just thinking about it, he can't wait to possess it immediately. But currently he doesn't have the ability to enter the ocean. The problem of nutrition is a threshold that cannot be bypassed. You can't just drink seawater to grow mushrooms, right? Don't think about this first. Chen Mo shook his head and completed the research on evolutionary clues. Evolution clues, super absorption. Based on the existing genetic data, you have analyzed and improved the creep structure, which will improve the expansion of organs, further expand the range of nutrient uptake, enhance nutrient uptake capacity, and greatly enhance the efficiency of gene uptake. Your gene uptake range has been expanded, and you can start from fresh organic plants, obtain genetic maps. You already have the ability to modify the environment on a large scale, which can improve adaptability +10 and danger level +10. Absorb the genes of plants. Photosynthesis, chloroplasts. In an instant, Chen Mo was ecstatic. With this ability, they can really grow on the surface of the sea and eat seawater to live. Adaptability and danger level, all skyrocketed by 10 points. You know, Chen Mo's danger level was only 11.8 before, but now, his danger level is equivalent to directly doubling. This in disguise illustrates Chen Mo's current level of strength. He is advancing towards a complete star-level creature. Even, in some characteristics, it is enough to adapt to the space environment. For example, low temperature resistance and low pressure resistance. Chen Mo has reached a very high level in these two items. Chen Mo turned his gaze and came to the island of Hawaii. The scenery here is good and the view is wide. It is very suitable for Chen Mo to observe his own evolution effect. He likes this feeling, watching the tumbling creep. The changes from the genetic level, reflected in the macro, are so magnificent. The creeping blanket surged and spread, a chirping sound sounded, and a palm tree was pushed directly. In a blink of an eye, the palm tree sinks into the money. It was silent, like sinking into a bottomless abyss. In 10 minutes, it was devoured. You know, this is a fresh plant rich in plant fiber. Few animals can digest this kind of thing, which is why herbivores eat and eat all the time. Because the nutrients that can be obtained are pitifully small. But for Chen Mo, it is different. Creep has really done it. Eat it dry and wipe it clean. Super absorbent is no joke. Now, as long as it is organic matter, it can be swallowed by the creep, and the place where the creep passes is barren, no different from the Gobi Desert. Don't you want to squeeze any more nutrients out of it? At this moment, Chenmo is no longer able to control the environment, but can completely desolate a planet and lead to destruction. Event: you absorbed palm tree cells, obtained 10% of palm tree genes, you extracted usable genes from them, your gene structure was optimized, your mycelium structure was optimized, and your nutrient absorption ability was improved enhanced, mycelium nutrient uptake speed plus 0.2. Information: you have obtained a 100% gene map of palm trees. By analyzing the genes, your understanding of palm trees has deepened. Based on this research, your understanding of organic species branches and carbon-based organisms has also been deepened. Carbon-based organisms knowledge +1, the efficiency of its various actions increases by 1%. Open black lens bracket evolution clue close black lens bracket, photosynthesis. Based on the 100% genetic map of the palm tree, you have analyzed a possible new cell structure, which will allow you to use a new way of energy intake, which will greatly expand your range of survival, and your nutrient intake the ability will be greatly enhanced, and a new method of material synthesis will be provided, which is expected to increase the adaptability by +20 and the risk by +5. You need carbon-based biological knowledge reserve +6000, plant genetic map +100. I'm coming. Chenmo held back his excitement and analyzed it carefully. Plants obtain energy mainly from the sun and inorganic matter. This is definitely a qualitative change. Chenmo can now rely on inorganic substances to obtain energy, but it needs to rely on decayed genes to secrete decomposing enzymes, which is stronger than most plants. But plants can use the energy of the sun to quickly combine inorganic substances in their bodies to become various nutrients. On this point, Chenmo is far behind. Which is more comfortable, eating meat and dirt, or basking in the sun? Chenmo needs all these abilities. If I can gain the ability to photosynthesize, then I will grow into a real sea, land and air species. Chenmo said with some excitement. Imagine, a kind of creep floating on the sea. It can receive sunlight with the largest area, and all of these sunlight will be converted into energy. The energy can support the creep, and absorb various elements from seawater in an endless stream. These elements generate various substances and expand the creep. Creep expands bigger and absorbs more sunlight. Energy, matter, creep. This is a snowballing process. And because he lives in seawater, Chenmo can start to think of ways to obtain a large number of genes of various creatures in the sea. More importantly, he can occupy the springs in those oceans. Already very hungry, and as the secret master of this planet, he also needs to control various species in the ocean. If 70% of the planet's area is not occupied, how dare you talk about your own planet's creatures? Even I can survive in the air for a long time, such as in the stratosphere above the clouds. Being able to absorb sunlight allows the spores to partially absorb energy, which can reduce some of the nutrients they carry and further reduce their weight. Even floating in the stratosphere is not a problem. This can experience part of the space environment in advance and provide data support for later evolution. When the time comes, the sky will be dyed green by the spores. Isn't it October green on everyone's heads? Chenmo laughed wickedly. Happy. This, evolution clue, photosynthesis, is very exciting. If you go into space in the future, it is also a very good choice to absorb sunlight as energy in the initial stage. Accumulating technology in this area now may be of great use in the future. Thinking of this, Chenmo controlled the creep and began to pick out various kinds of plants. Suddenly, all over the world, trees began to fall. Of course not many, for each type, Chenmo needs at most 2 trees. Even if it is a small grass, the consumption of Chenmo will not be very large. Compared with the original low-efficiency gene acquisition, this is much more powerful now. After many evolutions, the absorption capacity of the mycelium has been greatly improved. Now, only a small piece of flesh and blood is needed for the mycelium to extract a complete gene from it. He is making steady progress toward the direction that a small piece of dander can extract genes from a fingernail. Get more plant genetic maps, and I will evolve. By the way, speaking of plants, Chenmo turned his gaze and returned to the base camp. In the base camp basin, it has the most dense springs in the world. There are 3 springs, so the concentration of spiritual energy here is abnormally high. Even if most of it was absorbed by Chenmo and the little guys he raised, the surrounding trees also benefited. There are many mutant plants here. They all started with Chenmo, and there was a mutant giant tree, Chongyin. It is the best. Of course, there is still no wisdom. It is too difficult for plants to produce wisdom. But in other respects, it became very powerful. The roots spread for thousands of meters, and the whole tree even broke through the height of 400 meters. It was originally higher than this, but because it was too prominent, it was struck by lightning several times. Of course, Chenmo also made some restrictions on it, because if it goes on like this, it will attract human attention sooner or later. Imagine a giant tree 500 to 600 meters high protruding from other trees by 200 to 300 meters. Totally stand out from the crowd. However, with Chenmo's full control over human beings, he has recently lifted this restriction. The tree can now grow as tall as it wants. Chenmo casually controlled the mycelium to spread over, and when the mycelium touched the giant tree, it immediately made a chi-chi sound. It's like splashing sulfuric acid, but it's naturally incomparable with real strong acid. This is a slow corruption. It is conceivable how hard the skin can grow such a tall tree. 10 minutes later, the mycelium finally entered the trunk, absorbing the genes of the mutated giant tree. Not only this giant mutated tree, Chenmo remembered Lu Ru's but also a lot of information about it. There are mutant giant trees all over the world, and some even have slight mobility. Known as the Devil's Tree. Chenmo is going to get rid of them all this time. Event: you absorbed mutated birch cells, obtained 100% mutated birch genes, and you extracted usable genes from them. You integrated these genes into your own genetic map, and your corruption genes were partially enhanced. Your regeneration gene has been enhanced, your mycelium has been strengthened, nutrient uptake speed plus 0.1, spore growth cycle shortened by 5 minutes. Open black lens bracket information close black lens bracket. Through the accumulation of corruption gene technology, you have discovered a brand new field. Corrosion is a gene evolved based on corruption. You get the corrosion gene, which allows you to start making a super strong acid, which can corrode various substances extremely quickly, and has a strong effect on inorganic substances, metals, rocks, etc. Information: you have obtained a genetic map of a plant. The gene of this plant is representative, and you have obtained important research data from it. Your evolutionary clues: photosynthesis research progress reached 30%. A new way of evolution. Chenmo smiled lightly and opened the evolution tree. Sure enough, the entire evolutionary branch of corruption became much stronger. Not only that, it branched out into another branch, corruption. This is a branch on an evolutionary branch. At this time, looking at the entire evolutionary tree as a whole, it already looks like a tree. There are many branches, each of which is developing rapidly. My corruption genes have already evolved to a very powerful X level, so if I acquire knowledge in this area, new technologies will naturally be derived. Chenmo analyzed carefully. It seems that if you reach the pinnacle level in a certain aspect, you may go further along this road. The corrosion gene is completely derived from corruption with the support of my vast knowledge, and it can be regarded as the first gene that I created independently. Chenmo was very emotional. This is already a further step on the path of evolution. From copying, cutting and pasting, tinkering, to creation from scratch. Although he has not completely broken away from his original genes, he has already taken a crucial step in the realm of the gods. The corrosion gene came at the right time. I believe it has been researched to the limit, and the X-type, it is estimated that it can be used to deal with the hull of the iron lump. Corruption can be a very powerful weapon. Compared with highly toxic, it is a bit more corrosive, especially for protected targets. For some armored targets, the poison is completely useless. If you can't touch the target, even a milligram can poison a dozen soldiers, and it is useless. Corrosion is different. Its effect is immediate, and it works regardless of whether the target is wearing armor or not. The corrosion ability is strong enough to corrode and melt the most powerful metals. Continue to evolve. As soon as Chenmo turned his gaze, he switched to Lu Ru's gaze. He needs the geographical location information of all powerful mutant plants. The laboratory has been renovated again. The privacy and security have been improved to a higher level, and the equipment has not been replaced, because it is already the top. Lu Ru generally conducts experiments here, maintaining the same habits as before. Of course, due to equipment size limitations, some should still be performed in large laboratories. Right now, she was preparing to go to the big lab because something big happened. Does the teacher want my help? Ali asked worriedly from the side. It was the first time seeing the teacher with such a dignified expression. Need not, Lu Ru sighed. While putting on her lab coat, she sighed, actually, I don't know what to do. Maybe this will be a big crisis, and I have to convince the people above to use nuclear weapons. Chen Mo was slightly taken aback, and used a nuclear bomb. Ali's small mouth also opened wide. Is this krill really so powerful? Just look at the latest report. It's still on the table. Not only has their area recovered, but they have a tendency to spread outward. The incendiary bombs can only be clear for a while, and many krills will also be active in the depths of the sea. They seem to be becoming less dependent on sunlight. Quote, Lu Ru said with a headache. In fact, she has been thinking about the solution all night, and has communicated with many scientists. The conclusion is that continuing the current plan will treat the symptoms but not the root cause. Of course, nuclear bombs may not be effective, maybe radioactivity will bring more mutations and more dangers. But if it doesn't work, you still have to take a gamble. Perhaps artificial poisoning is not impossible. Another solution is to dump mulch, such as oil, to completely block the sea area from the sun. However, it is still uncertain whether the krill can be completely independent of the sun. Was it a krill? Chen Mo was deeply impressed by this, and these little guys helped him a lot. But now it seems that these guys are not restless at all, and they have grown up again, and they have grown tremendously. Chen Mo called up the genetic map of the mutated krill, and soon understood what was going on. Mutated krills no longer need the sun, or in other words, only need very little sunlight. The synthesis of a key substance in their body has been replaced by the theory of psionic mutation. Maybe it has something to do with psionic power, then we can't use nuclear bombs. It seems that we have to think about other plans. Lu Ru muttered to herself. This is the consciousness transmitted to her by Chen Mo. Now this kind of communication has become very convenient, and you can't tell whether it's what you think, or Chen Mo instilled it. As long as Chen Mo is willing, the other party will not find out. Even pouring more. Chen Mo thinks this method is interesting, maybe you can try it. It happened that after Lu Ru left, Ali was looking up information about plants. Chen Mo directly switched over. Then let her flip through the information on the vastly mutated plants around the world. Chen Mo's memory is very scary at the moment, the data just slides across the screen quickly, and he memorizes all the data. By the way, he instilled these memories into Ali's mind. By connecting nerves, it has dual functions with consciousness. The result was not as good as Chen Mo expected. Ali screamed, and immediately fell to the ground with her head. This method of forcibly stuffing into memory seems very painful, but fortunately, the effect is not bad. Perhaps it can be carefully observed and improved. Maybe some tacit cooperation is needed from the other party. While observing, Chen Mo controlled the progenitor cells in Ali's body, slightly paralyzed some nerves, and at the same time released hallucinogens to relieve this painful feeling. 0. But even so, Ali was still soaked through, lying on the ground like a puddle of mud, gasping for breath. Even, the pupils are slightly dilated, and when he opens his mouth, he can't make a sound. Just now, there was a pain in which the consciousness was about to be torn apart, which was very terrifying. It feels like my soul is gone. After a long time, she regained her composure and burst into tears with a wow. Woo, am I going to die? She got up a little scared. Then touched the head. There is no wound. What happened? Just now, there was a feeling that a hole had been cut in the head. At this moment, this feeling is rapidly disappearing. So much so that she wanted to feel the pain carefully, but she almost couldn't grasp the tail of the pain. After she drank a cup of hot water, this feeling disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't for the fact that she was soaked in sweat, Ali herself would have wondered if it was just a dream. Then, with a random glance at the computer, she slowly opened her mouth wide. She seems to remember all the above data. Just look at the beginning, all the data automatically come to mind. It's like, It's like I've already memorized it by heart. Ali flicked down in disbelief, and sure enough, the one below was exactly the same as the one she remembered. It looks really good. Looking at Ali, who was puzzled, Chenmo smiled. Before the time comes, the other party may never know what this is all about. But this ability, maybe have some unexpected benefits. I can integrate the knowledge and instill it into the target, so that I can mass-produce weapons of a certain specialty. For example, the tunnel worm, I can transfer it geological knowledge, so that it can know what is an earthquake and what is a volcano, and can also make some more professional judgments. Thinking of this, Chenmo couldn't help being excited. Maybe he can go a step further and compress the knowledge directly into the genes. With the release of genes, the corresponding memories are released step by step. This is similar to blood inheritance. Chenmo couldn't help but smile. It seems that all technological advancements are no different from myths. After admiring the lovely alley, Chenmo turned his gaze and came under a giant tree. A spring in the temperate zone is based on the 533 ground, and a big tree reaches the sky stands here. This tree has a height of thousands of meters, known as the Tongtian tree. It is conceivable that the strength of the tree can grow so high. At this time, human scientists have already detected nearby. It is impossible not to attract their attention to this kind of tree. Tisk tisk, this tree is really powerful. Yeah, Tongtian tree is the same as Janmu. It's really amazing. Compared with yesterday, its intensity has partially increased. Could it be the result of our drilling stimulation? Some scientists wondered, how did it mutate so quickly? Emergency response should be, non-intelligent species often do this. Another scientist slapped him and said in passing, have you forgotten the mutated krill a while ago? It wasn't said in the news that several psychers were almost frozen to death because of this stress response. The mutated krills are not extinct, and now it is said that another scientific expedition team has gone to deal with them, and Professor Lu Ru personally led the team. Several experts chatted while drilling holes and sampling. In the depths of the ground, there was a creeping blanket that spread silently, and samples were also taken. When a tree as hard as steel is touched by the strong acid secreted by the corrosion gene, a big hole will be burned immediately. There is no resistance at all. Chenmo's sampling speed is faster than humans who use machines to pick their heads. As soon as they started the equipment to drill holes, Chenmo below had already obtained the genes. You said that the mutation is getting stronger and stronger, alas. A scientist was obviously pessimistic. It's not that I can't trust Professor Lu, it's just that the world is changing too fast. Look at us, we are old professors, old experts. A lot of things come across, but also confused. Everything has to be restudied and relearned, which is really very strenuous. Quote. Really? The rest of the experts nodded. This person spoke their minds. The world is changing too fast. There is a feeling that today's understanding is today, and tomorrow will be obsolete. Take this giant tree for example. It looked the same yesterday, but today, some test data has changed. God knows what it will look like tomorrow. We are indeed a bit behind the times. This is still the age of young people. They are more capable of accepting new things. Professor Lu is still very young, and fortunately he has such a young man. But this time, I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. I heard from a colleague that Professor Lu has nothing to do with the matter of the mutated krill. Moreover, she firmly opposed the proposal to use nuclear bombs, and even had a big fight with some experts, just about what happened just now. Quote. It doesn't work if she opposes it alone. I heard that a large group of veterans from the Academy of Sciences came out to support this project. They just don't accept the youngest, but Lu Ru never ignores them. The journey is smooth, and sooner or later they will encounter difficulties. HMPH. The Academy of Sciences is still engaged in this kind of thing. I'm really full. I think those old guys should have left long ago. Some experts were outraged. Cut. Forget it, you, a guy who will retire next year. What are you doing here? How many people are under his control? How many interests are involved? If you don't get the project, are you going to raise it? Chenmo naturally listened to these, and when he finished on his side, he turned his gaze to Lu Ru's point of view. Obviously, you can feel her anger. I'm the scientific chief of the joint team. If I say it's not allowed to be used, it's not allowed to be used. Lu Ru directly said coldly. The academic truth has already been said. but no one listens, so it can only be a political truth. We will report directly to the above. Without your approval. Please pay attention, Professor Lu Ru, this is the Chinese Academy of Sciences, not your global joint team. Don't be confused about the location. The dean frowned. He had a headache. He shouldn't have interfered with this matter. However, so many colleagues insisted on this project, and he still owed favors to several of them. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and say a few words. But he knew that Lu Ru was telling the truth. Without her nodding, this matter would not have happened. Of course, the Academy of Sciences can apply for experiments by itself, but this is abroad. To span dozens of countries, this is already a matter for the global joint team, and without the approval of their chief scientist, even if this plan is passed domestically, it will be useless. Moreover, the higher-ups don't know any science, they only know that Lu Ru is very reliable. These old guys have never made any contribution at all, so this link in the country may not be able to handle it. But it is precisely because of this that they unite and are eager to prove themselves. They, still the masters of the Academy of Sciences, have not yet become obsolete. Lu Ru failed to handle the mutated krill incident this time, and they immediately felt that the opportunity had come, so after some research, they came up with this method. And it has been poked out through the media. The report was also written, and all the materials were handed in. After being stopped by Lu Ru, it would be quite embarrassing. The mutation is quite stable. Professor Lu said it yourself. I don't think there will be additional mutations just because of a nuclear bomb. Moreover, maybe their mutation is not conducive to survival. Some old experts said unwillingly. But Lu Ru didn't respond to him. All that needs to be said has been said. Continuing to discuss these technical details now is just repeating the same old tune, and it is meaningless to talk about it in circles. I will go on a field trip, but I don't have any right now. After Lu Ru finished speaking, she looked at the dean. The dean had no choice but to announce the adjournment of the meeting. After the meeting, he called Lu Ru to stop, smiled wryly and said, Professor Lu, the establishment of the Holy Terra Alliance is imminent, and you are about to become the chief scientist of the alliance. At this juncture, without their few votes, I can't be the chief. Lu Ru asked back with a smile. I didn't mean that. I also know that voting is just a formality. You see, it's making a lot of noise. Sigh, you can't let these stubborn old people, so I can let them retire quickly. Caught in the middle, I'm super hard. Quote, the dean rubbed his hands anxiously. There are so many science academies all over the world, and the scientists in them all support Lu Ru, not to mention the leaders of several major countries. He knows this very well. He thought that Lu Ru would consider pursuing perfection, and he was elected without a single negative vote. Now it seems that Lu Ru doesn't care about this false perfection at all. Then he really has no choice but to play the emotional card. Forget it, drop a nuclear bomb, that's impossible, it would cause a lot of trouble. Lu Ru gritted her teeth and said. In fact, she was also a little uncertain. Because, that probability is really too small. That probability is as high as 90%. Chen Mo smiled and talked to himself. A gene of krill may mutate at any time, Chen Mo knows better than anyone. With the help of radioactivity, they might not need the sun at all. This will allow them to take a crucial step. At that time, they will have to catch mutated krill all over the world, which is definitely a big trouble. For the global ecology, it is definitely a disaster. If Chen Mo does not intervene, it is only a matter of time before the whole world falls into the ice world. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe my channel.